Good afternoon and welcome to the Fargo Human Relations Commission meeting. I'm really happy you're here, and we're not even meeting for the most part virtually. So this opportunity to be in person is rather exciting. We will be doing introductions as we begin, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how today is going to flow, and then we'll get into the business at hand. So my name is Barry Nelson. I am chair of Fargo Human Relations Commission.
Rachel Hoffman, member.
Adam Martin, member.
I'm John Strand. I'm the liaison from the Fargo City Commission to the Human Relations Commission.
I'm Leticia Hillerud, Human Relations Commission member.
I'm Cheryl Schafel, and I am a Human Relations Commission member.
Cody Severson, Human Relations Commission member.
I usually like to have the staff, if you would introduce yourselves.
Tia Braseth, City of Fargo Community Development Planning.
Nicole Crutchfield, Planning Director.
Miranda Wolf, Planning Department.
Karen Plum, Planning Department.
Then we have Catlin Christie standing in the back helping with sign-ins.
Thank you. We have our cultural liaison, Vince Kempf. Thank you, Vince. And we welcome back Christy Jacobson. Welcome. We also have some partners from across the river, and we're going to be talking about how we can be working with them. So, well, Heather, you have several hats. Do you want to introduce just who you are and which commissions you represent?
Sure. Right here.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm Heather Keeler. I actually am a member of the Native American Commission here in Fargo.
Heather, Nicole wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
Sorry about that, Heather.
That's okay. I'm Heather Keeler. I am one of the members of the Native American Commission, so I think that's where we find a good partnership in this relationship. But then also, I'm the vice chair of the Moorhead Human Rights Commission, and so we're actually having a meeting very similar to this next Wednesday. And then I think all of us are going to work in collaboration on how we can best serve the greater population. And then actually, our chair, Kanya Don, is here as well.
Connie,
thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We do have an agenda that we are going to be following this afternoon. And so the first item is we have before us the amended agenda. Any comments, or if not, looking for approval of the agenda for the meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Cody?
Second.
Second. All those in favor of the agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We have minutes from the last time we gathered together as a commission from February, and that was in your packet as well. I'll give you a moment to look at that, and then I will also be looking for approval of the minutes from February.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Rachel to approve the minutes.
I second.
Second, Cheryl. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. And again, just to prepare for, we will have a public comment period in our session this afternoon, which is customary for us when we meet. We recognize that with the absence of us meeting for a long time and with the kinds of things happening in our country and our community, there would be interest in addressing the commission today. I'm just going to be asking if you're wishing to address the commission, if you would sign in on the near where Caitlin is, and then we'll have a sense of how many people wish to address the commission. If there's enough people, we might put a time limit. If not, we will not do that. Just to give you a few updates since last that we met, I want to first of all acknowledge two absences from our commission today, Hamida Dakane and Abdulwali Sharif. We yesterday had a very sad death in the community that particularly affects those two individuals, but I think it affects us all. Dahir Abdi had passed away after being in a coma for a month and from COVID complications, and he will be severely missed, certainly by all of us. And I believe his funeral is at this time, at the same time as we're meeting. So please hold the family and Hamida and Abdulwali in your thoughts and prayers during this period of time. Also, on a much brighter note, we can announce that there are 2 HRC members who have been awarded a Bush Fellowship. This is a really competitive and coveted award. I believe, if I understood correctly, there was over 750 applications and 24 were approved, 3 from North Dakota and 2 from this very body. And that is Letitia Hellerud is one of the award winners, fellowship winners, and Matur Alier is also, has been awarded a Bush Fellowship. So exciting news and congratulations. I also want to acknowledge that this may, maybe not it's conclusive, but maybe, Rachel Hoffman has served 7 years on this commission. Her term would be up at the end of June. That's when our terms began, July 1st, and she's elected not to seek reappointment to the commission. So at this time, I really want to acknowledge the incredible service that, Rachel, you have provided to our community, to this commission, to the city of Fargo. I believe you served 4 years as chairperson and oversaw the commission doing some really significant things in our community around planning around diversity during the time that there was the refugee impact study and a lot of other things. Your leadership is very much appreciated, and we are going to miss you here, but we know you're going to land elsewhere in this community in important leadership roles. So, Rachel, thank you very much for your service to the Fargo Human Relations Commission.
Thank you, Barry. It's been a huge honor to serve on this commission. I think the city and this commission in particular are doing great things. I'm excited to continue to serve the community in different capacities, but also I'm excited to see a new voice on the commission. So I encourage others to get involved, and this is really a good place to be with the city to make your voice heard. And so please apply to be a part of this or other commissions with the city. It's just so important to get more people involved.
Thanks again, Rachel. Thank you. Then there is in the packet a written copy of demands presented at the June 3rd, 2020 meeting with local Black Lives Matter and One Fargo organizers. I appreciate the fact that they've committed to writing what they are looking to seek as far as substantive change within the community. I'm looking at, people are looking. Were those provided for all? We all have those, at least up here. Those are for our consideration. And I can't be, I'll be remiss to say that this week has been huge in so many other ways. That on Monday, the Supreme Court ruled that members in terms of sexual orientation, gender identity are covered under Title VII of the Human Rights Act of 1964 in employment, which was huge and for many unexpected. And then today, just a couple hours ago, they ruled that said that the DACA cannot be immediately, they overturned the president's executive order regarding elimination of protections for DACA. So we're going to celebrate 2 huge events, 2 huge victories for the human rights movement. And we may, if we have enough time at the end of the meeting, we'll return to perhaps other announcements from commission members. At this time, I'm going to read a statement on behalf of the Fargo Human Relations Commission. There are copies of that also at the back table. The Fargo Human Relations Commission is a group made up of 9 citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the City Commission. The Commission works to promote acceptance and respect for diversity and discourage all forms of discrimination. We are appalled by the murder of George Floyd while in police custody. As horrible as the murder was, it is tragically reminiscent of too many Black and brown men, women, and children being disproportionately killed by law enforcement or vigilante-style so-called justice. We add the name of Rayshard Brooks, who was shot and killed in Atlanta a few days ago. As incredibly focused we are on law enforcement, we recognize that it's emblematic of a much larger societal problem. We have serious racial and economic equity problems in our country, and we have serious problems in our community which have too long gone unaddressed. We firmly believe in the freedom of expression, the freedom to assemble, the right to protest. We stand in solidarity with those seeking justice and demanding change. We add our support to the request from One Fargo and the ACLU in which they requested truth and transparency from the Fargo Police Department. What we vision going forward is that we will be sharing our strategic work plan, provide a safe place to hear stories, to particularly hear Black and brown voices. We will do this in as many ways and as many times as are necessary in large public forums like today, in smaller listening circles, and through one-on-ones. And we dedicate ourselves to a plan of action that will be transparent. Finally, we will be held accountable. So that's a statement from us as of this date. Thank you. Item 6 is to talk about future opportunities to engage with the Human Relations Commission. As I said, we were created back in 2000, and I've talked about what our mission is. To collectively build and realize this future, the Human Rights Commission wants to hear from you today, if you wish and are prepared to do so, and going forward. This may be the first time you're watching a meeting or attending in person. Whether this is your first meeting or not, you are wanted and welcome here. And I'll just mention that today the meetings of the Fargo Human Relations Commission are televised. They are being live broadcast right now and are also broadcast at a later date. And it's also good that we have them in our archives so that we can review the materials that are covered here. Messages for human relations members or the HRC in general may be directed at any time to planning@fargond.gov. HRC meetings are regularly held on the third Thursday, as you note, that's today, of the month at noon in the Commission chambers at Fargo City Hall. They are live streamed on the City of Fargo Facebook page. I'm not sure if it's the point of reading this out, but in their broadcast on channel 56. You can read and provide feedback on HRC's 2020 draft work plan, which is included in this agenda packet. In fact, we were prepared to trot this out publicly in late February, early March, and guess what? Something happened. So now we are ready to make this public and look for you to be involved with that as well. I failed to mention back in my updates, we do have a slide to show because one other thing that is occurring right now, sorry, Karen, I went past my own script. But there is an opportunity that is before us right now in the sense that the applications are now open for the Police Chief Selection Committee. Members of the community are encouraged to apply. It is due June 21st, so it's a very short window here. So if you yourself or know someone who would be interested in being a part of this really important process going forward, please note down the online application process and let people know that their participation in this would be very much valued. So at this time, I am going to mention, can I ask, just by a show of hands, so we can have a sense of timing, how many people would like to address the commission today? Okay. I don't think we need to impose our time per person limits. So I'm going to be asking you to, if you would, go to either one of the podiums here. If you could let us know who you are. If you represent an organization, let us know that as well. And we welcome your comments at this time. Welcome, Atur. Good to have you here. I already announced your fellowship.
Hello, my name is Frederick Edwards Jr. I am on the interim board for the Black Lives Matter chapter that will be coming to Fargo.
Hi, my name is Faith Dixon. I'm also on the interim board of Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
2 questions that I posed today, just for the city commissions and the rest of the people in the room to think about. Question number 1 is, what does it look like for us to have a state holiday of Juneteenth rather than just a celebration of Juneteenth? Because what we have right now, I really appreciate Governor Burgum for having us have a celebration, but that is not what we're looking for. We don't want, essentially what it is right now is Halloween. That's what Juneteenth has looked like. And so it's not a factual basis, or it's not about historical relevance. And so we would like it to be a state holiday and not like Halloween, where it's just a celebration where people participate if they want to, because that is the Independence Day of African Americans here in America. And so if that's not important, you know, we still have Columbus Day as a state holiday. So these are things that that's just a question that I want to pose to the community. And then secondly, the second question is, what does it look like if we have transparency from the higher ups, from the Fargo Police Department, from other people? What does that look like for the rest of our community, and how would that make us feel if we do have that? Those are the 2 questions that I pose, and those are answers that I'm looking for as well.
Thank you, Fred.
I would say as well, just to piggyback on what Fred said, also I would like to ask the Human Relations Commission too, as well, is within our police department, where is the body cams? So I want to know why we do not have our police force department wearing those body cams, which is worn by many police departments in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other comments? We welcome. Just go. We know who you are, Heather.
Okay. Are you starting the timer?
We're not timing.
Oh, that's dangerous. Okay, I'm actually gonna piggyback on Fred's first question about Juneteenth. I just want to remind this community that we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, and part of that is that it's not just a celebration, it's an understanding of the culture and the history in which our nation is built. You know, the threads of this country is built on our land, on our backs, on our lives. And when we create a day of recognition, it implements throughout the community. Most of all, it gets into our school districts. You know, we know that K-12 doesn't talk about this. This is part of the reason why people grow up with such blinders on. And so that is a huge request, and I just want to remind everybody here that both the city of Fargo and the city of Moorhead recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and so I think that that's an absolutely excellent idea. I'm just going to expand a little bit more on what I said originally, and I don't know if Connie, you want to join me? And congratulations on the Bush Fellowships. That's huge. I mean, I know personally that is like a huge process, and to have y'all in our community is amazing. Do you want to talk about the Human Rights Commission, what we're doing over in Moorhead?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, in Moorhead, I am the chairperson of Moorhead Human Rights Commission, and when I was nominated by Heather, the COVID-19 thing hit. Our first meeting is coming up on 24th. But I also have a quick question about the police department here in Fargo. which I also mentioned in Mohead many times. When we ask police department to hire someone who looks like us, they always say, there is requirements, have to fill up the person who is going to be that position. So I'm wondering if they can hire a community officer. This person doesn't have to have a gun or anything, but a person who can build relationship between the police and the community. I mean, the community police officer here is doing a phenomenal job, and we solve a lot of cases together. But I am wondering if we can get a person who looks like us, who have officially from the police, even if this person is not be licensed, but someone who can people share with the information and feel more comfortable. Because I have cases that police respond 911 call, and they just go a house with 8 family members, no one speak English, and they just hold all the people in the living room, search the house just because the neighbor called 911 because there's some noisy coming out from that apartment. So these people are wondering what they do, because this immigrant community, they have a scare for the police because they come from a drama area, war zone. Whenever they hear about the police, they think it's a big deal. They did something wrong. So it takes for me to make them understand what's going on. It's okay, they just not want to call. So when I'm saying this person as a community officer will help them also to translate when they respond emergency calls, to make sure they understand what's going on, and also the community side, they will feel more comfortable about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. And I know it's something that we have talked about on both commissions, because I hear rumors from Moorhead, and I can tell you we've been talked about here a long time, is that we need to be more intentional in communicating or working together. And so I think our situation right now is going to make that happen. So thank you for being here today, and look forward to your meeting on the 24th. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Kira Jackson, and I'm also a family member of Black Lives Matter. A question I had was, when are real trainings for police going to take place? I'm not talking about a 12-hour, 20-minute training on cultural diversity or how to handle people of color, for say. I want to know when we were going to be taking serious, because like Ms. Faith said, no body cams. How are we as people supposed to believe anything that these officers are saying if we don't have any proof or evidence? It's basically our word against theirs. You feel me? So I would really like to know, when will that take place, because this is a very serious matter. That's all I have to say. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Kira? And if you haven't signed up, if you would do it on the way out, just so we can attribute it back to the right person. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Jessica Macmillan, and I am a Black activist. I want to thank everyone for the time. I know this past few weeks has been really nerve-wracking. Just a question for the committee. What are we doing about over-policing in Black communities? What I mean by that is, whenever Black people are gathered in a certain vicinity, we notice policing, particularly within those communities, and it makes us uncomfortable. So I really would like to bring that to the committee attention. And also, there are frequent traffic stops on immigrants. What are we doing about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you standing up in the moment. Victoria?
I'm going to read a quote. I have crossed the land. I was free, but there was no one to welcome me in the freedom land. I was a stranger in a stranger's land, by Harriet Tubman. That's how we feel. We left our country. we come to this state, but we're not welcome, not by the police department, not by human services, not by anyone. The question is, has any of the leaders ever come to us, not the elected individual that sits and agree with them, but to us and say, why don't you trust the police department? Why don't you feel comfortable? Why don't you feel unwelcome? In the land is supposed to be a land of freedom, but we don't feel free. Has anybody taken that time to ask? We talk about the Black Lives Matter and the Fargo One movement. People are concerned. We hear the word thugs, they were called. We hear the word terrorists. But anybody ever take the time and say, why are they doing what they're doing? Did the leaders ever do that? Or are they just so busy trying to clean up and hiding things under the rug? Have anybody ever asked, why do we have so many criminal justice? We have so many of our children of colors are overcharged by Fargo Police Department. Why? When they're committing the same crime as a kid of white in the school, yet they are charged. They're not sent to Perry St. John's, you know where they send them? To juvenile courts. Has any leader that raised a red flag and put a stop to it and be like, okay, what is happening? Why is this happening? Until the leaders ask that question, why, and get the answer, I don't know how we're gonna move forward. We will always be the strangers in the land of freedom.
Could you introduce yourself, Victoria? I think everybody knows you, but just for the record.
Victoria Johnson.
Thanks.
I'm also with the Families United for Advocacy.
Thank you. I'm really comfortable with silence tonight because I've seen some
Chair
really
Nelson,
good...
we do have someone on the phone for public comment.
Oh, thank you. Please proceed. If you could let us know who you are.
Your line has been unmuted. You can go ahead now.
Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah. This is Jana. I was calling to see if there's any push for an investigation of the Fargo PD that isn't going to be done by an employee of Fargo PD. I'm just really concerned after reading the report yesterday that came out, and I would prefer a more independent investigation because I'm very concerned about the differences with the department's outward versus inward communication. And I was also curious if officers have a way to anonymously report concerning behavior.
Was that last phrase anonymously report on a peer?
Whistleblower.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon, for calling in.
You.
Are there any other calls pending? No? Okay. We have some time left together. I want to emphasize that this is not a one-time conversation, obviously. This is far too important to try to establish in one setting. And this is a bit daunting. I'm not particularly comfortable myself with this kind of setting for a conversation. I applaud you that are coming up to the microphone and speaking. I said the only thing missing here is a moat between us and the audience. But I'm wanting to look forward to having, like I said, many conversations here and elsewhere. I would encourage anyone to invite us to come out of City Hall and have conversations in a variety of settings, formal and informal. I'm want to assure you that the questions you raised today are very pertinent ones. We were deciding we weren't going to be trying to come up with off-the-cuff answers. These are all really important questions, but I think they need to be seriously considered. We as a commission will be taking these to a conversation going forward. And we know there are people in the room that represent other areas of leadership that will also be taking this into consideration. I just did want to acknowledge that we have a new incoming city commissioner with us today. Arlette Preston is back here. Welcome. We look forward to working with you as well with the Fargo City Commission. I'm going to ask again, anyone that wishes to have a comment, you're more than welcome. Sure. Jessica, right?
Yes. Jessica McMillan. I understand that the North Dakota Board of Cosmetologists have a strict rule, and I wanted to bring this out that maybe we should consider giving braiders a little lenient requirement and actually 16 hours of training. Maybe we can consider a 3 weeks course for braiders. That way mothers in the community have another source of income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, are we allowed to say anything?
I was going to just open it up. I think at this point, if commissioners would like to.
Or can I stay here?
Yeah, I think you can speak from here.
I can stay here, okay. So my name is Adam Martin. I'm a Human Relations Commission board member. I'm also the founder and executive director of F5 Project, where we do a lot of criminal justice reform, spend a lot of time with people in prisons, jails, detoxes, treatment centers across the state of North Dakota. My experience, I want to say thank Frederick and the rest of you for coming today, because of the time that I've spent on the Human Relations Commission, this is the most voice I've seen, right? And I would implore you to continue to come, and actually implore you to be on this commission. I think that we need more people of color on commissions in the city of Fargo, and so if you have any questions on that, I'll help you do that. My experience as a white person in Fargo-Moorhead is I've been arrested more than 30 times in this community. I've been convicted of 5 felonies and 10 misdemeanors, and I've never been to prison. I've never had an attorney represent me, and anytime that I went to court, if I showed up in my own clothes, I went home that day too. I've done research on the mugshots posted by the Fargo Police Department on social media, and 40% of them have been people of color, when they account for maybe 5% of our community. And they're the lower end of the social media across the state of North Dakota on posting mugshots of people of color. Native Americans account for 5% of our population. I may be a little low on that, but they account for 25% of our prison population. And African Americans are not that far behind when white people account for 86% of the population. And so there is a problem. There's systematic racism happening throughout this entire city. It's happening with employers. It's happening with the city of Fargo. It's happening with the state of North Dakota. And it's a big problem. We've already had conversations across the nation that we're going to start involving addiction specialists to go on police calls, but that did not happen until fentanyl started affecting white people. Methamphetamine's been a big problem. Alcohol has been an even bigger problem, and they're destroying our people of color across the nation, and not one mention of the transparency or having a liaison, like you said, has ever been brought to note. And I can only say that it's probably because we're not talking about white people, right? And so I want you to know that I'm on your side, and I've marched with you, and I will continue to do it. And the one thing that I heard today that I think needs to be implemented right away is us coming forward as a commission backing the Juneteenth being a state holiday in North Dakota immediately. And so in the body cams. Congressman Kelly just announced it recently in a video that they need to have more surveillance in interrogations and stuff like that. And I would say that he would probably, I can't speak on his behalf, would back body cams as well. And so I stand with you. As a member of this community, as a member of this Human Relations Commission, and as the executive director of F5 Project. So.
Thanks, Adam.
We do have another individual on the phone for public comment.
Okay, we're ready to take your call.
Your line has been unmuted. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chardonnay Gallion, and I am a member of the Black Lives Matter. One of my concerns, one of my questions, I apologize, is when are they going to take the Black Lives Matter serious? There are plenty of emails floating around. There are comments made in regards to some of the Black Lives Matter board members stating they didn't get in contact with some of the leaders and people that are controlling, like the mayor and the governor here in Fargo. And we want to know, we have emails floating around where we contact them. They have emails stating that they never received, and we're trying to find out when are they going to take us serious? When are they going to reach out to their community, reach out to all the Black lives in the community? We are crying out and asking for their help, asking for our voices to be heard every day. We just want help. We want the FPD to hear us, and they're still ignoring us, even when we email, and they say, we don't. When are we going to be heard? When are they going to put on the police cameras like every other state, like every other city? When are they going to show that they are with us and that they protect us just like they say they do? We help and we pay taxes for them to help serve us, but then we are looked over. When are the Black lives going to matter?
Thank you. That would. Could I catch your name again?
I apologize. My name is Chardonnay, and I'm a member of the Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
I do speak pretty fast, and I get tension because this is something that I strongly believe in. And I see it every day. Our Black brothers and our sisters are being harassed, and there's no cameras. There's nothing being proven and shown of everything that is going on. And then you have FPD basically investigating their own situation. How is that fair? How?
Shannon, thank you. Any other comments? We have plenty of time.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure, Leticia.
Thank you. My name is Leticia Hellerud, and I would like to make a comment on one of the questions regarding police training, ongoing police training. And I'm sure that as a commission, we will go through these questions like Mr. Chair mentioned, but I wanted to touch on this because it's also something that's like ongoing cultural competency training is something that I'm very passionate about. And I also feel like I can be a resource or connect organizations and leaders who are seriously interested in doing this, not checking a box. Because most of the time I see people who want to do one training a year, and you cannot do that. And I'm not their person when they ask me that question, but it usually opens conversations, and I'm always looking forward for those doors to make sure that they understand that the situation or the work that needs to be done needs truly a commitment that is backed by their budget, a commitment that is backed by the staff that they have or the people that they hire, but also how they promote within, a commitment that's backed by their mission statement or vision or like their monthly meeting. I want to make sure that this is really ongoing conversation within every organization. In the same way of thinking, I'm very excited, for example, to see that the police department wants community input in hiring a new chief, but I'm more interested in looking at their board, like what, board of directors or board of trustees or the governing texts. I want to see that these voices are represented, and I want to encourage everyone who's here or everyone who is in the community to ask the same questions. How can I join your board? And if some of the terms of joining a board of directors are exclusive, making sure that you you ask the right questions, you look for the right allies, and say, I think this voice is missing, and I want to be part of that, or I know somebody who can fill in the gaps. And sometimes, as a minority who serves on many boards where I'm, always the only person, I want to also make sure that my voice is still loud. So I'm saying this because I'm so passionate about closing the racial disparities and other disparities that actually my Bush Fellowship is on that. I want to work with both the mainstream communities and the minority populations to make sure that everyone understands that more perspective we have at the table, the better laws or better decisions we can make for everyone. That's how we become inclusive. So we can march, and it's important that we do that, but I think it's also important to think long-term, to think strategies, to think what changes need to happen at the individual level and the collective level. How do we go about that? What changes can be short-term, mid-term, and long-term? How do we make sure that it's happening? And the accountability piece is huge, but also how do we make sure that we have laws, like at the state level or country level, that backs all this work? So I think we have to be very strategic. We have to stay united, because I see sometimes when we don't understand why some people are advancing the movement in this way, which may be different from our way, the tendency is to cut them off. But it's important to understand that we'll have to work together as minorities, but also with the mainstream communities. For me, it's important that the mainstream communities understand their role in this. And the analogy that I like to give is the seed and the soil. No matter how good the seed is, if the soil is not ready or in good condition, nothing is going to happen, and vice versa. So we really have to continue this conversation. And as my fellow Commissioner Adam mentioned, I really hope that we can keep getting this kind of presence, because this also gives us energy and gives us, tells us what is happening outside in the community that we may not have seen or may have not understood the extent of. So I think I thank you everyone for coming, and hope that this is ongoing.
Thanks, Letitia. Frederick, did you want to?
Yeah. First, I just want to say I love Letitia. I know her personally. She's just an amazing person, and so I know where her heart is, and I appreciate that.
I love you too, Fred.
I appreciate that. I do think, however, cultural competence training is a surface level thing, because what ends up happening is that we get people who are culturally competent in somebody's culture, but they're not culturally competent in somebody's experiences. And so those are completely different things. And so we can have somebody who knows all about Sudanese people, but don't know how Sudanese people are struggling right now or need help right now. And so I really applaud cultural competence, and I think that it's important for us to know our culture. But Starbucks, when they had the racial issue happen, they had a day where every single store had their cultural competence. So Starbucks is a little bit more ahead of us than the rest of America, because they could do cultural competence in a day, and somehow that could solve issues. And so for me, I think that is a very surface level start. I think that that's the thing, is that we just need to start starting things in Fargo rather than just having the conversation. That's the other part. been at NDSU for 5 years now. We've had student panels, we've had students of color come in. I've been at community meetings where we talk and we talk and we talk and we talk and we bring up lists of problems, right? But what ends up happening is that we never have a 369. The list of things that people want to happen. There is no, we did something about this, or we did something about this. It's just like, okay, well, what else do we need to happen? What else do we need to happen? What else do we need to happen? We're sorry that that happened. How can we fix this? But then there's no tangible things. And so I think that this was the first time in my life in Fargo where I seen commands actually acknowledge, but then it's like they won't go forward. And so for me, I feel as though cultural competence is very important for everybody, universally, because we need to understand our brothers and sisters no matter who they are. Even if you live in a white segregated area, you are not excused from race because you are also a social construct race here in America. So for me, I believe that yes, it's cool to have cultural competence, and yes, it's cool to have conversations, but it is very traumatic to keep bringing up traumatic experiences and things going on in our community. And people are like, I'm so sorry that that is happening to you. We'll make sure that we do stuff about that. And then we just have this conversation a year from now, the same problems. And so for me, it's deeper than just having a test. I think that we need to have implicit bias tests. We need to have racial bias tests. We need to have tests on people's knowledge of our history, because at the end of the day, if you don't know about the genocide of indigenous people, you shouldn't be working with indigenous people. If you don't know about the oppression and the denial of access of Black people, you should not be working with people of color. If you live in a segregated area of all white people and you are reinforced by all white ideas, I don't think that you should be working with people of color. And I think that those are conversations that we need to have about whiteness. At the end of the day, we can keep doing these surface level things, and we can keep on pushing these Band-Aids on this big old scar that is right here, that is leaking and bleeding here in our society, or we can really have more than just conversations, but we can have things that can heal these wounds. Just like Victoria said, there are people in the community who don't have time to come to this meeting because they're at work right now. There are people in the community who have spent their time volunteering hours and hours and hours and hours and hours trying to help their community out. And then there are people who push those people and say, well, you didn't come to this meeting, so you can't care about your people. And so for me, it's not just about dialogue. It's not just about cultural competence. It's not just about having a conversation, because we can all sit at the table, but if certain people at the table are benefiting and other people are getting scraps, therefore you are not at a table. You are just getting entertained. And so I would just like for us not to get entertained. Just like in the movie 300, are you not entertained by the injustices? Are you not entertained by the hurt, by the trauma? Are you not entertained by people confused on what Fargo Police Department is doing? Are you not entertained by people being able to have dialogue and conversations about trauma for the last 20 years in Fargo, North Dakota? And many of those problems are still happening today. That's my question. Thank you.
May I make a comment?
Cody, is that you? Okay, yes, and then Mature had a comment.
Oh, sorry.
You can go ahead, Don.
No, I just want to make a really quick statement also. I am elated to see this many people here today. It's really heartening to be able to see individuals here in this capacity. I'm sorry that we're not doing better by now, but I also just wanted to add on that LGBTQ plus people are not kept in this arena nearly enough either. And specifically during June Pride Month, it's just really disheartening to see, to hear the narrative not follow the LGBTQ plus population as much as it is. I'm excited to at least be able to work with these individuals to try to change that, but it's just a comment that I wanted to make, that Black trans lives matter as well.
Mature.
I'm Mature Alir. This is my 3rd year on this board, and I'm very happy and delighted to see people that look like me coming out in bigger numbers and voicing what has been going on in this community. I know there's racism going on, and systematic racism is here in Fargo too. And I wanted to thank all of you for coming out to voice that out. It's not the work that we can do as just white people or Black people. It's the work that we could do collectively, we Black people and the white people that are against racism. So when we walk out that march out there, 90% of the people that were marching there were white people. And those are the people we need to walk with us into solving this problem. We cannot do it alone. We have been voicing this for a long time, and now is the time. We cannot let it go. We have to come to these conversations more often and form groups and get the right connection, form the right allies, and keep the fight going. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Cheryl, you're making a motion? A
no.
motion toward the microphone?
No, I just told Leticia I wanted to talk to her afterwards. But I would like to make a comment. I can't put myself in your shoes exactly. I can't experience what you experience. But what I can do is I can listen to your stories, and I can know that that's not what I experience. And the reason I don't is because I have a thing called white privilege. I mean, I know it and I understand it. I don't like it. I have friends who are scared every time that their sons walk out the door because they don't know if a police officer will stop them for a broken headlight. Friends who are people of color. And I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about being followed around in a store because somebody thinks I am going to shoplift something. Adam talked about how many times he'd been arrested and everything, and he'd never, ever gone to prison. And that's even for felonies. And I can remember times when I was picked up driving and I was pretty drunk, and I didn't even go to police headquarters. They just put me back in the car and let me drive home. And those are things that I understand. I can't know what it's like, but I can understand. And what I'd really like to do is be able to, support you, be your ally, and help your voices to be heard. And I think that's what we can do on this commission. Because, I'm a longtime union person, and an injustice to one of us is an injustice to all of us. It's the old, the greatest good for the greatest number. And we need to bring everybody into that greatest good. Do I know that there's systemic racism in North Dakota? Of course I do. I grew up in a small community. I grew up in a community where we didn't see people of color, and we still had systemic racism. Just in the small little things that people said every day that they didn't even think of. And we need to address that and do our best to help educate people. I'm rambling here. But to see you as human beings, to see us all as human beings. And I'm not making any sense, am I?
You are.
Oh. But basically that we need to be here to support you, to do our best to get in touch with people, to get your concerns out there. And the other thing is to bring ourselves into your community so that we can talk to people besides who are in this room, because you're right. People are working. Everybody can't come at noon on a weekday and find out what people need and what they want. And unfortunately, this is happening at the time with the coronavirus, which impedes everything. And we need to work to find ways so that we can have those conversations and we can come to you and still have it safe for all of us. And I'm not talking safe because of disagreements and things like that. I'm talking safe because of the virus and the environment that we just happen to be in at this time. And I don't even know how to close this.
Thank you.
Just to let you know that we are here to support you. We do want to hear you, and we do want to be your allies. And the best thing that we can do is go through what we've heard today too, look at recommendations that we can send to the City Commission, to the mayor. And we want you to keep coming back and talking to us. And I think everybody on the committee here wants to come out and talk with you too. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. I think that I've talked a lot about things that we're going to carry forward and work on. I'm going to ask commissioners if there's any course of action that wishes to be taken today on anything we've heard.
I would like to present a motion. I think there's been a lot of comments and a lot of discussion, but until we're taking action on the things that need to be taken action on, it's just going to continue. And so one thing that I know that we can do today is I would like to make a motion to have this commission make a recommendation to the City Commission to observe Juneteenth as a city holiday. And I realize that we can only do it on a city level, but I think that could make a precedent for the state to observe Juneteenth. So I would like to make that motion.
Is there a second? Second, Cheryl?
I will second.
Right?
We will second.
Is there a discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to request the commission to declare Juneteenth as a city holiday indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So I want to just add again, thank you so much. Yes, oh, sorry, Commissioner Strand.
Are you close to wrapping up, Mr. Chair?
I'm getting close.
If could I just have a moment?
Sure.
I'd like to thank all of the leaders of our community who've stepped up, who are speaking up, and who are showing up. We desperately need you at the table. We desperately need to hear your voices, and it's on us to work together and partner for the community we choose to make going forward for everybody. So thank you, and thanks for being here in Fargo. You know, we can do this in our town, and we can show people how to do this right. And it's our moment to do that. The rest of the world can look at Fargo and go, look at what they did. You know, so let's work on that. I thank the commissioners. I'll just say a couple observations. It's time to put some teeth into the ability of the Human Relations Commission to have some actual authority. You know, rather than us have this sense that we're a feel-good organization that once in a while we hear something, but we need to be able to act on what we hear from the people. I can't tell you how many times in the last 4 years we've heard of issues that come to us, and then we just don't know where to go with them. We don't have the roadmap that gives us the teeth to act on what we've heard. So, and frankly, I'd like to see it called the Human Rights Commission, and be what we're all about, and be real about that. So those are some topics. I'm just going to throw some ideas, and I know we've heard from folks in the Black Lives Matter and One Fargo community with what people call a list of demands. They're absolutely reasonable. They're absolutely attainable. They're workable, and I look forward to joining with you on those. And I believe that mindset is there at the city level. There are some topics to add to that list, if you don't mind. You know, equity issues across the board are huge. Equity in housing, it's not just policing, but policing is key, but equity in housing, equity in employment, equity in legal protections, equity in schools. You know, there's some topics I think we just need to agree we're going to discuss. And I don't always know what our practices and policies are, so it'll be a learning moment for many of us. But I agree, we should be talking about chokeholds, whether there's a ban on them, what is the application of them here, what's allowable, what does our community want. We should be talking about no-knock warrants. What do we do locally? What are our practices? What do the people want? How often does that happen? What are the implications of no-knock warrants? I think we should, a topic I would add to the list, and I don't know the status of the gang task force. You know, I remember some years back, some musicians who were simply hip-hop artists that were called gangs. And then we'd go officially and to the venues where they're going to have a musical performance and convince them not to have their performance because you don't want all these gang people there. You know, and how many times did this happen in Fargo? With one of the artists I know who I consider family, and he couldn't even do a hip-hop show in town easily without just major pushback. So I want us to look at the gang task force. Does it still exist? Who are they? Where are we at with it? I hope it's gone. Christy's shaking her head, maybe it's gone. It's no gas. Wasn't there a regional gang task force? Okay, so those topics, let's talk about our applications of the use of gangs even in the past and thoughts about that. But use of force policies. I want to learn more. What are our practices locally? What are our standards? How does that compare with the rest of the world? I think there is a community sentiment that we should look at to what degree and when is it triggered to have an independent outside study of actions and complaints that surface in our community. Transparency is tied to that, and integrity. I'm not saying people are wrong, I'm just saying these are fair things to discuss. Police reports, you know, I've had instances where some of our folks let us know that they had some police reports that people went and reported things to the police department and a report wasn't even filed. So, you know, we have to really tie down those moments where people do go and file reports and assure that there's action and a follow-up to them and that the reports are received and acted upon. Diversity, one of your list of demands included a diversity in the boards and commissions, and I think adding to that is a diversity in our workforce across the board. If we have 11% of our people in this town who are in our community who are non-white, then everywhere we look, we should try have a reflection of our community. Everywhere, in the classrooms, in law enforcement, in every board, commission, in every department, as much as we can. And yet we have to make these departments that people will want to work in. So those bridges are important. Lastly, the topic of, it was raised over here by Adam about the prison issues and the law enforcement and police reform issues. I would like us to study bail and bonds and how many people are sitting in jail that can't make a $500 bond. And how much are we spending to keep them in every day? And what are the crimes that are they're in there for? And at what point is it reasonable to keep somebody in jail versus letting them back out into the community to be functional and have a life and be good people again, hopefully. So we have a bunch of topics to talk about, and I thank you all for stepping up. But my hope is that we keep showing up. My hope is that you keep our feet to the fire. My hope is that we get people on every commission we can. We have an opening or two potentially here, but let's create some working committees. Let's create some new tables. Let's bring people to new tables to discuss these issues proactively and together. So there's room at the table for all these voices. And Mr. Chairman and members of the Human Relations Commission, this is your moment, another moment for us to really impact our community and to impact the life of people here, the quality of life, the relationships they have with each other, the sense of safety, the sense of being welcome, the sense of being accepted, the sense of us having the same hope and aspirations for everybody to blossom and grow and flourish in life. Every single human being, I'll end it with this. We all do better when we all do better. So thank you for showing up. Let's keep showing up. Let's grow this effort. Let's bring people to the table. Let's stand up as a voice and partner with our law enforcement, partner with our city, partner with all of our various aspects of our community, and work together for the future we all want, because we get to now. And thank you all, folks, very much.
Thank you. Did you wish to make a comment? You'd like to follow up, and then Ruth, we'll take your comment as well.
Thank you. Just one quick last statement. I really do appreciate what you said. It's just 100% true. I also appreciate what everyone else has said on the board as well. but I am a woman of, I talk, but I also, when I talk the talk, I walk the walk. So I really hope and pray that you stand by your word. You know, my people, we are not doing this for publicity. I don't care about these cameras. I don't care about these interviews. I don't care about social media. I don't care about the comments being made. My intentions as a woman and as a human being and a woman of color are right. I stand by what I stand for, and that is by and for my people. We live in this community. I go to NDSU. I was the president of the Black Student Association at NDSU. And not once did I get a call asking me to speak on behalf of the campus, on behalf of my people. That is another change that we need to see as well. So I humbly appreciate you having us all here, and nothing but peace come your way. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth, we'll have one more comment. We decided we would have the flexibility to go over the 1 hour mark, so please, thank you.
Nido shadzi nakbaga o madashi mia adash heads ma be sigids ma zigidads nakbaga o. My name is Ruth Buffalo. I carry my late grandmother Ruth's Hidadza name of woman appears. I'm a 100th generation North Dakotan, and I'm not going anywhere. I am here to speak as a mother, and I really want to challenge the Human Relations Commission to be more than a rubber stamp within the umbrella of the city of Fargo. As a former member of the Native American Commission, there's a lot of good intentions there, but there's also some missed opportunities that we faced in the past. If you remember, there still needs to be relationships mended from as far back as a young individual being pulled out of a sweat lodge by the police, from the lack of response in the murder of the late Savannah LaFontaine Graywind, where the police protected the couple upstairs by zeroing in on the parents, the Graywinds. We remember that. And as a Native American woman who sees the disproportionate overrepresentation of our Native people in every level of jail systems, as someone who has incarcerated relatives in the jail systems right now, yes, we do really need to walk our talk and engage in a conversation and not attack each other online. Engage in a conversation, walk our talk. Please, I'm challenging you to walk the talk, that you say all these good, happy, feel-good, fluffy words don't mean anything to the victims who have and continue to survive violence. There's many forms of violence. There's lateral violence, there's violence in the social media realm, predominantly against women and women of color. And it was mentioned earlier, Representative Armstrong is in favor. Well, let's not forget he voted no against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. That directly impacts Native American women. So if we're gonna have these conversations, we need to make sure there's great intersections and do more than just this fluffy, happy, feel-good talk, because that time has passed. And so I'm challenging these commissions to do more than just be a rubber stamp, with all due respect. Cultural competency work, great, but we need to dig deeper. Narrative 4 conversations, those are great, because you put yourself in the other person's shoes. We introduced a bill for cultural competency in 2017, died by 6 votes, so I don't know that it's a be-all, end-all, but we have to dig deeper, and it starts within ourselves. So Madzigirads, thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. I have another, Martin, you'd like to address? And then I would see if there is any other. This is too important in the conversation just to leave, so.
I just want to speak briefly a little bit about Commissioner Strand, when you were talking about looking into concrete things that we can do to study whether or not we want to get chokeholds off the table and things like that. That seems like a no-brainer, a pretty simple thing we can do. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the need to study something to death if it's something that doesn't really impact our lives very much. But if people of power are impacted by something that's happening within society, damn, you can move pretty frickin' quick. And I think that kind of speed and that kind of sincerity needs to be there. And when you talk about getting the information about things like chokeholds and about bond and all these other issues that are great that you're bringing up, I mean, you listen to these discussions here of white folks that we don't know anything about this stuff. So I just want to make it very clear, none of us are the professionals that we need to be looking at for this kind of research. These folks are the folks you need to go to the research and say, hey, is a chokehold like? There's probably people in the community that have real lived experience that could get up and say, well, it's absolutely terrifying. Here's what it is. And maybe act upon that kind of, instead of, trying to go to some police training academy to have them say, well, here's how we do this, and it's perfectly safe. Bullshit. Get people in the community that are impacted by these things, take them seriously, and act. I mean, I see this time and time again. If it's something that impacts the marginalized, we study the hell out of it forever and then do nothing. And hopefully they'll forget it and settle down. But if it impacts the oil industry, good Lord, we act now and we take care of those people, because good Lord, they're hurting in this time of the pandemic and all this financial, I mean, goodness sakes, we got to make sure that money that's coming into the state, that we help cap those oil wells and take care of this now. But these things, we better study. I'm just saying, think about how we study it and think about how much time, and let's do this and act upon people's real lived experiences.
Other comments? Victoria, give you the last word. It doesn't have to be the last word either.
I just want to add, since we're talking about police training and all that, I think it's really important for, we also have to recognize, because in our school system, we have police resource officers. And a lot of those charges that are coming from juvenile, a lot of it's coming within the school system. So how much of training are those police officers having when they're in our school, working with our children? Not only do they work with all the children, but they also work with the vulnerable children. And so that's something that needs to be looked at. And I brought that up during a safety committee that it was hosted by the North Dakota Kirsten Baileysley. And I asked that in front of all the police officers that were there, how much of training are you equipped enough to work with those children? What kind of training do you have to be in the schools, in school buildings, working with those children? So when you're called, you know how to handle the situation. And that's a huge concern for me as a parent, as an advocate, that working with families and working with children. Some of the things I see, some of the things you see, you will never believe when I tell you that's what's happening to children inside our school in the hands of police resource officers. Nobody will believe it. Nobody. But it's happening. And guess what a lot of those children are? Black kids. Black kids. I had a mother that they told her one time, you need to call the police in your school. After she called 911, they told her to call the school resource to report what happened to her child to the resource officer. How do you do that as a parent if that's the same person who did that to your child? How do you do it? How do you call? So there's a retaliation, there's intimidation. So that's where that quote come from. You're in a stranger's land. How do you even voice it? So we need to make sure that those officers who are working with our children in our school are well equipped mentally. They can be able to work with those children and understand. Just because you're a parent, you have a child, that does not mean you have that experience and skill to work with children. So I think that's really, really, really important that we look at that. And that is something that I hope the commissioner, you guys will work with the schools and see what their contracts are. You know, what are their contracts with the police department? Are they part of the school, or are they police officers in uniform? Because that's a question that I ask 1,000 times and we never get that answer as a parent, because we want to know. It's a concern to me as a parent if I'm looking at the disciplinary plan from the school and it's getting reviewed by a resource officer, that's a concern. You can go online and poll our school district, their disciplinary plan, and you can look at it. Guess who views it? Go underneath it. It'll say has to be authorized and viewed by police. What kind of training do they have to be able to view a policy? Because restraint and seclusion, prone restraint is prohibited under federal. But are they aware of that, or what's going on? So we need to make sure that we also look at that as we're looking at the community, what's happening to our families in the community. We also need to look at what's happening to our children in our school system as well. And who are we sending in there that are working with those children?
Thank you. I just want to make a point also that if, even though you haven't spoken today, if you wish to be alerted to future conversations or to be a part of any kind of way of talking with us, please leave us your information in the back and we'll make sure that you are brought along with the process. Like I said, this is the beginning today. It's not anywhere near the end of going forward. Any other comments? Hearing none. Anything else for the good of the group? All right. Thank you very much for being here with us today. This is, some of you made the comment of being appreciative of being a part of this. This is your house and this is your place. And so we thank you for being in your house with us today.